Hello and welcome to the Bison Basketball Show. Thanks for joining us and Happy New Year. It's time for conference play for both the North Dakota State men's and women's basketball teams, with both groups opening Summit League play at home against rivals. The Bison men had one last tune-up at home against the University of Jamestown this past weekend, looking for their third straight victory. It was the first meeting between the Jimmies and Bison since 2006, and early on, tight game. Tyson Ward slashing to the rim for the lay-in. Ward, a double-double with 12 points and a game-high 13 rebounds for NDSU. The Bison get rolling midway through the first half. Jared Samuelson hitting back-to-back three-pointers. Samuelson shooting 44% from long range this season, and the lead is pushed to 11. Cameron Hunter making his third start of the season, getting the feed on the back door from A.J. Jacobson for the Jam. Hunter had 9 points and 9 assists. The Herd had 25 assists as a team. Paul Miller driving and leaving it for Dylan Miller for the Big Jam. NDSU led it 56-28 after the first 20 minutes. In the second half, Miller gets the scoring started, hitting one of his 5 three-point field goals. He scored a game-high 23 points. Then Jacobson would find a cutting Chris Quayle for another lay-in, plus the foul. The Bison with 41 bench points on the afternoon, shooting 59% from the floor, and NDSU rolls to the 99-50 victory, moving to 8-6 on the season.
We got a chance to go home and hang out with our families for Christmas, and I'm pretty sure most of us didn't touch a basketball, wanted to get, and now this game helps us get back and get ready for this big game coming up on Wednesday.
Having 4 days off during the year, you don't really see that too often with our schedule, so it helped us get comfortable. We had a couple tough practices the past couple days, and then came out here, had some fun, and got to get ready to go against SDSU on Wednesday. We can't go in too confident though, because these two teams are extremely good. They were picked in front of us in the Summit League preseason polls, and they have as good as players there is in the league, and we're going to have to prepare hard, prepare well, and hopefully be ready to go.
All right, we now welcome in Dave Richman, the NDSU men's basketball coach. Bison getting set for conference play, and what a way to start conference play off, Dave. South Dakota State at home, and then South Dakota on the road, the two border battle teams. But maybe that's ironic and appropriate based on how these two teams and three teams have played over the last couple seasons.
Yeah, no question. Nice little welcome back to the Summit League play, preseason number 1, preseason number 2. But we're excited. We feel like we're playing some of our best basketball of the season, winning 4 of 5, and coming off some good wins. It was nice to get championship number 1 down in El Paso, and our guys have come back from break pretty hungry and had some good practices and took care of business against Jamestown. But we're excited for the next step, as we call phase 2 of the season.
You talked about the Sun Bowl Invitational down in Texas. The defensive effort in both of those games, I think, locked in so well, and really against UTEP, who had been playing pretty good basketball, held them to just 2 points in the final 8 minutes. Do you feel like you're close, or are you just never close when it comes to the defensive side?
Well, we're getting there. I think the biggest thing I'll give our guys credit with is their understanding, that urgency. They're coming out and setting the tone, and that's really our identity to defend. And what we did better there is rebound and finish possessions. And I think that's a big part of being a good defensive team, and we're starting to take pretty good care of the ball. We didn't finish the Jamestown game the way I would like, but again, there's always room for improvement. But the biggest encouragement from my perspective is just that's our focus, that's our understanding, that's who we are, a tough-minded, nasty defensive team.
Cameron Hunter inserted into the lineup down in El Paso. He started the last few games. I think all along that was probably the plan at some point, maybe when you felt Cameron Hunter was comfortable. What kind of led to the change there?
I think, again, to your point, Brian, you're exactly right. It was something where a redshirt freshman had never been on the floor in a Division I game, just to throw him into in any environment, let alone at that point guard spot. It was just part of that adjustment phase, and we were doing some things defensively pretty well. There's some things we needed to clean up offensively, and Cam's got the ability to get to different spots on the floor. Now what we need to continue to see is that progress of him making good decisions, and he's also helped us get to the free throw line a lot better, and that was something that we weren't doing very good at all. And you look at offense and the product of what kind of shots you're getting and get to the free throw line. Those are very underrated avenues of basketball that we've been able to clean up a little bit lately in the last 4 or 5 games.
I feel like, Dave, and I don't know if you feel this way, but just watching your team, everybody looks fresher, and I don't know if that's maybe because the minutes have been spread out more and distributed more evenly, and you have a deeper bench. Do you feel that way, or how would you look at your team?
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, Brian, but I'm encouraged to hear you say that, because that's something that we have focused on. I think it's sometimes in the fall and early in the season, you can take your lumps or go through some learning experiences because of it. But we are consistently playing 9, 10 guys, and that really helps. And, again, the guy that keeps coming to mind in my mind is AJ Jacobson, and a lot of that credit goes to Dan Gu and the success that he's been having on the court. When he gets in there, he's having productive minutes where we can sustain him a little bit longer than in years past. And that, like I said, that's twofold. I think Dang's being productive, but it's also big picture perspective, getting AJ off the floor a little bit.
With only 14 conference games, losing IUPUI, you hate to place too much emphasis early in the schedule, but it just doesn't seem like there's as much room for error if a team starts slow in the league because of that. I don't want to say do you place more importance on the early games, but is it one of those things you have to be cognizant of as a coach?
To be honest with you, I haven't thought about that at all, Brian. I think it's the old coaching cliche, one day at a time, one game at a time. It really is for us, and we had a tremendous day of practice the other day, and hopefully another one again here today as we round into 2 very important games. And you're going to win, you're going to lose, and no matter what, you're going to have to go at it again the next day against another good, talented team. You can see the Summit League, top to bottom, is terrific again, and that's exciting from a competitor standpoint, from a fan's perspective. And well, like I said, we like where we're at, and we like how we're continuing to progress.
All right, Dave, we appreciate the time. Looking forward to this conference season. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Happy New Year, Brian. It's great to be back.
It is. Dave Richman joining us here on the Bison Basketball Show. Stay with us. We will check in with the Bison women. Had their first conference game against South Dakota, and chat with Maren Walseth. That's coming up next.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Insurance Company, Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and Proceed.
Welcome back to the Bison Basketball Show. The North Dakota State women's basketball team played its last non-conference opponent of the season prior to the new year before hosting the University of South Dakota in its Summit League opener. The Bison taking on Dakota State, looking to get back to the 500 mark and pick up their 7th victory of the season. The Bison women's second meeting all-time with the Lady Trojans, and a quick start. Riley Nudell knocking down the open 3. Nudell shooting 55% from the floor this season. The offense continues to roll. Riley Jacobson getting free underneath. She had a double-double with 11 points and 10 rebounds. Michelle Geislerova came into the game shooting 44% from three-point range and hit 4 of 7 from long range, scoring 16 points off the bench. Taylor Thunstead also hit 3 shots from outside the arc and chipped in with 13 points. Bison cruising, taking a 51-20 lead into the locker room. In the second half, Thunstead coming up with one of NDSU's 14 steals and getting it ahead to Nudell for another lay-in. She had a game-high 17 points. Emily Dietz had a career-high 18 against Florida International before Christmas. She added 6 points in this contest, 2 on the hook shot in the paint. And NDSU cruises to the easy victory, 97-42 the final. The Bison shot 10 of 23 from three-point range and had 48 bench points overall.
We are really unselfish, and I think that's awesome. And I also like the high pace that we play at, because that creates more possessions, that creates, more open looks, more chances to score, and I think that really works for us.
Coach stressed just focusing on what we do best, being fundamentally sound, so that's more crisp when we do start our league play, because there's not going to be very much room for error when we start with that. But I even think it was nice that we got to play on our home court. We haven't been here for a while, and I think that brought us a lot of confidence that we can bring into Tuesday.
The Bison return to their home floor to host South Dakota in the Summit League opener, and trailing early on when Sarah Jacobson knocks down the 3, 11-8 game early. Later, Autumn Ogden, the nice lob pass inside to Emily Dietz, the freshman from Fargo, scored 10 points off the bench, but NDSU still trailed by 13 after the first quarter. But the Bison make a charge in the final 5 minutes of the first half. Macy Quilvang hitting a cutting Taylor Thunstead for the lay-in. Thunstead added 8 points and the lead is down to 10. Then with 1:30 left in the half, good ball rotation to Michelle Geislerova for a three-pointer. The Bison had 20 assists on the night, and it was a 6-point game going into the locker room. In the second half, Marina Fernandez opens the scoring, driving to the basket and finishing with the left to trim the lead to 4. Fernandez had 8 points and 4 assists. The Coyotes would answer with a 14-3 run. J.C. Bradley was 5 for 5 from three-point range and scored a game-high 21 points. USD led it by 19 going into the fourth quarter. The Bison would battle back as Riley Jacobson hits the tough leaner in the lane. She had 10 points and 6 rebounds to cut the lead back to 11, but on the next possession, Kira Duffy going to the basket for 2 plus the foul. She had 19 points, and South Dakota wins it 82-67. NDSU had a season-high 22 turnovers that led to 32 Coyote points and never led in the game.
We got to take care of the ball. I mean, first and foremost, that really killed us in the first quarter. So I think just valuing the basketball each and every game will help us a lot.
I think that we need to forget that we lost, but at the same time know that we have to move forward and learn from our mistakes here. We practice on Thursday, so I think that we just need to show up in practice, be physical, and go at it.
Stay with us. There's plenty more to come here on the Bison Basketball Show. After the break, we sit down with Coach Maren Walseth to break down the conference opener and look ahead to the Bison's matchup with South Dakota State. That's coming up next. All right, welcome back. We are joined by NDSU women's basketball coach Maren Walseth, and the Bison women one non-conference game to kind of wrap things up on that end, to kind of get back in the swing of things, and then hosting South Dakota. Dakota State, let's go back to that game a little bit. Probably good to shake the rust off a little bit before getting into conference play, especially with the two heavyweights you had off the bat.
Right. Coming right off Christmas break, get a couple practices under your belt, get everybody back into game flow, game mode. That was very helpful for us. I thought we played very well versus Dakota State. It very much of a team win, and we had a couple great practices leading up to USD. And
then just like that, got to flip the page, got to host South Dakota, same way you started the Summit League schedule last year, and you're able to get the Coyotes at home. But boy, they came out and really shot the basketball well. What did you make out of that performance?
I think we had some confidence because of the last time that they were at the Shack, but certainly they had maybe a added incentive or a little revenge going in their favor as well. But I think the game really was told with our turnovers, our inability to take care of the basketball, gave them easy opportunities, allowed them to kind of get into a rhythm, and we were playing catch up the whole night.
As much as things went bad early with the turnovers, and there were a lot of them in the first quarter, 10, that led to, I think, to 18 of their points, your team still settled down and was able to climb back into the basketball game, and only down 6 at halftime. You had to feel pretty good after that.
I did. I thought our second quarter, as you mentioned, we held our composure, calmed down a little bit, had a couple different combinations. Emily Dietz played very well in that segment. I thought we were more under control and handled their pressure better in that second quarter and set us up for halftime.
Coming back out in the third quarter, I think South Dakota kind of reasserted themselves, came out with a little bit of grip, but you guys never really got out of the game. I think you guys were in it the entire time. It was an 11, 10-point game in the fourth quarter. I think encouraging for you to see that kind of fight out of your group, both your reserves and your starters throughout the whole 40 minutes.
A basketball game has ebbs and flows, isn't a game of runs, and unfortunately we didn't have enough of the runs, and their runs were a little longer, and our inability to contain on defense really hurt us in the second half.
Coach, I think there's a couple different ways you can look at how to start off the Summit League schedule. You got two huge games, South Dakota State to start things off, but at least I guess you're going to know where you're at after these next two games, right?
Right. The conference schedule is the same for everybody. It's challenging for everybody, and we have two difficult games right off the bat, and that's okay. Measure ourselves, get us prepared for the rest of the conference play. We have to be ready to play every single night.
Well, and then going down your first Summit League road game at South Dakota State down in Frost Arena. That's going to be interesting to see how some of your freshmen handle that, but also how some of your returners handle that, because they've been in that atmosphere before.
Absolutely. It's a great environment. It's a great basketball environment for us to play in, and some of the veterans will need to show their leadership for some of the young players who haven't been in that type of environment.
How do you feel like your kids have come along, your young kids, the Macy Quillvangs, the Emily Dietzes? They've finally been able to get their feet wet a little bit, but there's still some lessons to learn. What are the biggest things for them to take moving forward here?
We just finished a week of having role meetings and revisiting our roles. And when you talk about the freshmen's roles, we were able to highlight just how far they've come from the first day of practice and the first basketball game that we've had. Very pleased with all of our freshmen, but certainly looking for consistency and continue to fight through whether it's the fatigue or the game management or physical play. And for the young players, it's the first time they're experiencing experiencing that and being able to do it more consistently, I think is something everybody strives for.
And haven't had to play them like 50 minutes either, which makes a difference as well. All right, Maren, thanks so much. Good luck at South Dakota State.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us here on the Bison Basketball Show. We have Greg Stemen, our MidcoSN analyst, as we look ahead to the Summit League schedule and break things down. That's coming up next. All right, welcome back. We are now joined by Greg Stemen, our MidcoSN basketball analyst, to break down the Summit League for the North Dakota State men and women as they break into conference play. And a tough way to start off for both squads. Border battle, South Dakota State for both the men and women. What a way to start off, especially on the men's side, Greg, where you're playing the two teams that were picked right in front of you in the Summit League standings.
Yeah, similar to last year when North Dakota State had to start out on the road at South Dakota State and kind of got them early. It's going to be a challenge in talking with some people. Are they must-win games? Not necessarily, but you sure love to protect your home court when the opportunity presents itself. Bison will have their hands full, but there's no question Coach Richman and his staff and his guys understand kind of the magnitude of that game to open conference play.
Now with only 14 games in the conference because of IUPUI leaving, how much does that magnify every game? Because if you fall behind early, it's not going to be as easy to make those games up later in February like maybe in the past you could.
Yeah, with a extended conference schedule, you're right. There's maybe a little more room for error. At the same time, you have the home and home with everybody, and it's the opportunity to find a way to play well enough at home to eke out some wins. And then who can you sneak up on the road? I don't think there's any question. The fans love these North Dakota State, South Dakota State, North Dakota State USD games. They're traditional, and it's going to be a high-intensity level, just a whole new level of competition when it comes to conference season. So it'll be exciting. Yeah, a lot of importance on these games without question.
Let's talk about the men and their non-conference schedule. 3 high majors. Bison played really well on the road at USC, played exceptionally well in a 2-game tournament down in El Paso, Texas at the Sun Bowl to win those 2 games, including a win over the host UTEP. Yeah. It seems like the Bison are trending in the right direction going into conference play.
And I think a lot of that has to do with the way they kind of set things up. Coming into the year without an established point guard, can we bring a guy like Cameron Hunter along without putting the pressure, of starting, the weight of the world on his shoulders right away? Well, that's a credit to Paul Miller. Kind of playing out of position, utilizing how broad his game is and helping his team doing what's best for the team. And now he's kind of worked his way into the starting lineup. I think that was the plan the whole time, is how do we position ourselves so that we are ready to be the team we want to be heading into conference season. And you know what? I think they have to feel pretty confident coming home from El Paso, kind of going with that starting lineup and the rotation they have now.
It really seems like North Dakota State defensively is so much further ahead where they were last year. And really the scores are not as high across the league in the non-conference games as they were at this point last year. Is that a testament to the way teams are playing, or just the fact that the personnel on the offensive side may not be as good?
Well, it's a combination of a lot of things. Sometimes it's what do the schedules look like that you play in the pre-conference season. And so I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I just think a Dave Richman team has always been, wanted to have that foundation, the backbone of their program, be our ability to get defensive stops and rebound the basketball. And that's what gives you a chance to not only defend your home court, but find a way to get some wins on the road.
And it's worked out well for North Dakota State, held UTEP to just 2 points in the final 8 minutes in that Sun Bowl Invitational victory.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears to the women. Tough start for them, but we have seen a significant improvement for the Bison women in the non-conference, winning 7 non-conference games, only 2 a year ago. It seems like that group, with its depth, is starting to find itself, even though it is inconsistent at times.
It is. At the same time, they've got some pieces that are important to their success. When you look at guys Larova and Fernandez and some of the younger bigs, it's taken some pressure off those, Thunstead and Jacobson and the need to play them ridiculous minutes. And I think they're also taking some pride in their ability to defend. That's what's going to give them a chance. It sounds crazy. The Summit League on the women's side, for the first time in forever, there's possibility of being a multi-bid league. When you look at Western Illinois and South Dakota State and you throw USD in there, they have some quality wins, and the RPI of this women's league is going to be difficult. So the women, there are no easy opportunities for them, but at the same time, they are substantially better, substantially deeper, and I think Coach Walseth has a chance to build some momentum with his team, and that, they're going to get tested early.
Yeah, and there's no question about that. And for the Bison women, surprised at the progress that has been made from the freshmen now in their sophomore years. I mean, they look like a different group.
Well, they are, and that's a credit to the strength and conditioning staff at NDSU. They are much more mature physically, and you need to be to compete in this league. And it's neat to see those results, and hopefully it translates into success.
All right, Greg, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Always my pleasure.
All right, more to come here on the Bison Basketball Show as we take a look ahead at this weekend's schedule. That's coming up next.
The Bison Basketball Show on Midco Sports Network is presented by Nodak Insurance Company, Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, and Proceed.
Back to put a wrap on this week's Bison Basketball Show, and a couple of big border battles this week for the NDSU men, hosting Summit League favorite South Dakota State at the Shack. Tip-off is set for 7 p.m., and you can watch that contest on Midco Sports Network. The Bison on the road this Saturday for a showdown with South Dakota down in Vermilion. That game can be seen on Midco Sports Network as well. Coverage begins at 1 p.m. The Bison women are also on the road this weekend, taking on South Dakota State down in Brookings. Tip-off scheduled for 2 p.m. down there. We'll recap all those games next week. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.